Though young Perkins had on occasion seen his grandmother in moments of sadness, he had never actually seen her cry. Now to have witnessed her weeping, not just sobbing, but unburdening her soul through a torrent of tears, wounded young Perkins. To be present as she released such a mournful, heart-rending flood, like a clock wound too tightly, like a dam bursting, to stand helplessly by and witness a woman as strong as his grandmother overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotion was an unnatural sight. It sent an uneasy feeling coursing through young Perkins. Now, to see her seated in the rocking chair, her eyes closed in silent reflection, was indeed an alien sight. "I know I'm right," the pastor confidentially replies. "I've been in this here world nigh on 35 years. I know white folks. I know how they think. I know how they be. We just gotta wait a spell, that's all. Then we all going down to Muskie and get Jonah. You just gone and let that there ear heal up." The pastor gazes down at the young man, his eyes reflecting the sternest expression. "Don't let them see." Looking into the young man's eyes, then at the wound on his ear, he allows his meaning to be understood. No more need be said. The warning was plain. The pastor cupped his hands beneath the nozzle of the water pump, whereupon the young man instinctively works the handle. After refreshing himself from the water pump, the pastor stands erect. Gazing afar off, he surveys the horizon. A strange expression contorts his face into an angry leer. Momentarily unconscious of every presence, the pastor gives its vent to his anger. Speaking through gritted teeth, his eyes in the direction of the conjurewoman's shack, he growls out bitter accusations. "It's all your fault, you old witch. Your soul will burn in hell. There's gonna come a reckoning. You hear me, you old witch? As sure as God lives, there's comin' a reckoning." No sooner than the pastor vents his threat, a cold breeze suddenly chills the summer air. The feeling of 1,000 icy needles pricks the young man's every pore. His muscles seizes up, constricting every limb. He stands frozen to the spot by the grip of fear. "Pastor, what have you done?" the young man murmurs through trembling lips. All the while the pastor stares defiantly in the direction of the haunted swamp, where the conjurewoman's shack ominously stands. As if to compound the nightmare, the frigid breeze carries with it the sickening stench of putrefaction, like that of the grave. No, not the grave, reflects the young man's mind, but the tree, yes. The rotting stench of hell was exactly like that which emanated from the tree that night. The pastor was issuing forth a challenge. Surely he knew what fate had befallen those who dared challenge the conjurewoman, the danger that came with merely mentioning her name. Pastor Jackson was playing with death itself. Down in his heart, deep down in the marrow of his soul, he must have carried a death wish. "You must be mad," young Perkins thought to himself. It was as if the pastor was standing under her very shadow, waiting for the sword of Damocles to strike. Madness, madness. The spell was broken by Miss Emma's anguished cries, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus!" The two rushed to her side. "What's wrong, Grandma?" Young Perkins frantic to comprehend the nature of her agitation. "Jesus, Jesus!" the young man's grandmother keeps repeating. Her eyes bulging, her face contorted in shock, she quickly stands and begins pointing in the direction of the open gate. "Jesus, Jesus!" The look of terror unceasing. In fact, it intensifies. His mind ringing with uncertainty, he stares in the direction of his grandmother's gaze. The pastor vainly attempts to calm her. "Easy now, ma'am." He begins rapidly patting the back of her palm. The tension builds to a fever pitch. "Grandma, what is it?" Tears well up in the young man's eyes. "Jesus, Jesus!" Her shouts become shrill screams of the most horrific utterance. "Grandma, what? What do you see?" "Jonah! Jonah!" shrieks his grandmother. It was all too much for the young man. Instantly he was clutched by the fingers of an unseen hand, the grip of which sent a white-hot explosion of light bursting across young Perkins' mind, the flash of which rends his soul from his flesh. Standing outside of himself, he looks down in disbelief at the body, a body that lay helplessly on the porch, its limbs contorted in a ghastly pose. Eyes rolled back in his head as two white, bulbous, pupilless orbs strained to escape the confines of his skull. Hovering there, he watches helplessly as the sight of spasmodic convulsions forces the disembodied spirit of the young man to look away. In so noting, he senses his body drawn into blackness, as if falling down a well. He feels himself turning, spinning, tumbling into the shadowy realm of infinity. Distant voices echo through the murky shadows of unconsciousness. The youthful sound of children reverberates through the young man's mind, raising the curtain of consciousness. The familiar fragrance of bacon and eggs is a welcome sensation, one that the young man takes in with ever-increasing breaths. "Ah, bacon." Young Perkins voices through a weakened breath. A young girl gives a shout of attention. "Hey, everybody, I think he's coming to. Is you alive?" A small hand vigorously shakes his shoulder. The violent agitation causes young Perkins' eyes to open. There to meet his gaze is the figure of a young girl, Trina, Kevin's 10-year-old sister. Leaning in her nose, almost touching his, she once again questions, "Is you dead?" The absurdity of the question forces young Perkins to smile. "No, I ain't dead." Overjoyed to receive a reply from one of whom many thought dead, the young girl rushes from the room. "Y'all come look, he ain't dead." Amid the commotion is heard the agitated voice of Kevin. "Doggone, I done lost the bet." Within moments, young Perkins finds his bed surrounded by the entire clan, their faces beaming with the reassurance of life. "What happened? How did I get here?" inquires the young man. "Today would make a full week." Kevin's mother responds. "You were talking crazy, wasn't he?" says one of the younger children, their beaming smiles undiminished. All heads nod in agreement. 7 days? Says young Perkins, still trapped in a state of confused bewilderment, his mind struggling to comprehend the loss of time. "That's right, 7 days," replied Kevin's mother, her face reflecting the level of mounting concern. "It was Pastor Jackson brought you here. Lord, child, we thought you was dead for show. We heard a knock at the door, and lo and behold, there he was holding you in his arms like you was a baby." "What happened to my grandma? Is she—" Kevin interrupts. "She's okay. Pastor Jackson took her over to Bessie May's. She asked for you every day." A pleasant voice is heard as Kevin's aunt enters the room. "I thought I heard voices. I'm glad to see you're among the living. I prayed for you." She gently places her hand on the young man's forehead. She gives a playful wink as she continues feeling for fever. Her welcome smile sends a warm rush over young Perkins. "Good morning, Miss Hazel," he says with a sheepish grin, his puppy love apparent to all. "Y'all don't have to fuss over me. I'm okay." Kevin bursts into laughter. It was amusing to him to see young Perkins so embarrassed by the attention paid him by the widow Hazel. He knew full well that she was the object of his affection, his secret girlfriend. It tickled him to recall the many different scenarios young Perkins would dream up, the little melodramas that would place young Perkins and the widow alone. This particular scene was reminiscent of one of those fantasies, whereupon he would find himself sick in bed, teetering on the verge of death, while she, resplendent in her beauty, would play the role of Florence Nightingale, lovingly nursing him back to health. Kevin knew that this was young Perkins' dream come true. It was obvious to him that young Perkins was relishing every moment, eagerly accepting every gentle gesture the widow offered. His laughter abating, Kevin begins speaking in a snidely, mocking manner. "No, y'all don't have to make no fuss over me, ain't that right?" Squinting his eyes, he glares at young Perkins. "He be just fine, ain't that right?" Young Perkins remained silent, his eyes all the while returning Kevin's glare with a glare. He retorts in an equally mocking manner. "Yeah, I'll be all right. If Dr. Kevin say I be well, then I guess I be well. Now ain't that right, Dr. Kevin?" The young girls begin snickering, amused at the comedic display. Kevin's mother shushes the children. Her serious tone commands the attention of all. Looking down at the young man, her eyes piercing the layers of flesh, right down to the pit of his stomach, the intensity of her gaze reaching for the gut of truth. "Tell me now, child," the preacher say. "He say your grandma seen Jonah. Tell me, child, is that true? Did your grandma see him? Jonah?" The room becomes deathly still as she awaits an answer. Each face is focused on the young man. Eyes widen in anticipation. Young Perkins gazes at the faces of the group, struggling to come up with an answer that will satisfy them. How could he pierce the veil of their understanding? It was impossible for him to depict that nightmarish moment. How in God's name could he describe the indescribable? During the interim of reality, while he hovered, suspended between the ethereal and the physical, he did indeed see the subject of his grandmother's horror. Yes, before the well of darkness overshadowed his consciousness, he had seen Jonah standing in the exact spot where his grandmother was pointing. The spirit of Jonah's mutilated corpse nearly passed all recognition. He couldn't tell them that. How could they sleep at night? In the winter, when the wind blew cold and the shadows grew long. If he spoke the truth, if he revealed to them the scope of what he really saw, they would find no peace. Their souls would be as haunted as his. Wisdom called for discretion. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I don't rightly remember." The declaration of ignorance seems to satisfy the group. All but Kevin's mother not wishing to press the matter, she excused herself from the room, calling the children to the table. "Come and get y'all's breakfast," she calls from kitchen, whereupon the young children eagerly scamper to the table. Kevin and Hazel remain in the room. "I suspect you want your breakfast in bed," Kevin says with a smirk. "Leave him be," his aunt replies. "You go on and get your breakfast. I'll get his plate." Placing her hands on Kevin's back, she gives him a gentle shove. "Gone now," forcing Kevin from the room, not before he flashes young Perkins a parting glare. Standing in the doorway, Miss Hazel looks lovingly back at young Perkins. "You just rest yourself. I'll bring your plate. I'll feed you." "Thank you, ma'am," he meekly remarks. "Oh, you're so sweet. You don't have to call me ma'am. We're friends. You're my little man. Just call me Hazel." "Yes, Ma. Hazel. That's right. That's my little man. Just Hazel." She then exits the room, leaving young Perkins in the most delirious state of rapturous glee. His 13-year-old mind envisions the two in the most passionate embrace. Hands folded behind his head, young Perkins reclines on the pillow and begins silently mouthing the words, "I love you, I love you, I love you."